Good afternoon, folks. I'm going to give people just a second to get jumped into our room here. People are getting their tech hooked up. Welcome, social workers from across the state. I love it. Got a nice group of people joining us today. All right. Looks like just about everybody's set up here. Folks who are joining us from outside, so anyone who's not a presenter today, you are welcome to have your cameras on and be in this space with us, or you're welcome to turn them off. It's really up to you. It is nice when we have people to talk to as we go as well, but it's lovely to have you all here. My name is Karen Goodenough. I'm Executive Director at NASW Minnesota, and today I am really excited to present to you with this fine group of presenters, Next Level Leadership in NASW. So this is an opportunity for us to share sort of the inside scoop on what's going on with NASW at the national level. I hope that some of you in the audience today are, or those watching later via YouTube, or maybe others you know, are interested in stepping up your relationship with your professional association, or maybe you want to be more connected with the national social work community. I often say to people that this is our association, like all of our association. And when people are, especially when people are being critical about what NASW is doing about this or that, or not doing about this or that, I often ask like, well, what do you think we should be doing? And then turn it back to, and how can you help us with that? So there's so many ways for people to engage with our chapter and with NASW and our association nationally. And so today we're going to highlight some of the ways that people can step up and get more involved at the national level. We're going to hear from two Minnesotans, Tony Bibus and Barbara Shank, who are on NASW National's board. And we're going to hear about their experience as board members and kind of what they're up to. And then I'm going to turn it over to an awesome sort of new leader in our midst. We have with us Jessica Hoeper, I have to get that right. And Jess is a, she is on the National Committee on Nominations and Leadership Inquiry, and she's our Region 9 rep to that group. So she's actually working on behalf of 3 states, but she happens to be a Minnesotan also. So it's really fun to have 3 of our local people at the national level working on our behalf. So a couple of housekeeping things, folks. Your CEU and your evaluation will be emailed just following today's session. We'll also, as I stated, we're recording this session and planning to put it on our YouTube channel for those who missed it, and for you all to share with your friends and colleagues if you think of someone during this session that you think would be great for national leadership. Shireen will also send you the link for the recording so that you can share it with others that you think might be interested. They can also watch it and earn 1 independent study CEU, which is great. So also, in terms of just housekeeping related to the recording, if any of you don't want your likeness or your video to be on the recording, or don't want your voice to be on the recording, please go ahead and turn your cameras off. And when it comes to Q&A, if you have any questions and that sort of thing, go ahead and drop your questions and comments into the chat. And I won't call you out by name. We'll just, I'll share what your comments and questions are on your behalf, and we'll get to those as we go along. Now, throughout today's session, I do encourage you to drop questions, comments, thoughts into the chat as we go. If they're related specifically to what our speakers are talking about at that moment, I ask you to not start or get involved in a side conversation in the chat. It gets really confusing for people to try to pay attention and be a part of the chat. So try to stay on track with what we're doing, and also know that at the end of today's session, we'll also have some minutes for some Q&A with everyone too. So if you want to hold your thoughts till the very end, you can do that as well. All right, let me just get my chat box open here so I'm ready to hear from all of you. And to start things off today, we're going to spend the first chunk of time here today with our 2 national board reps. So first off, I want to introduce again Tony Bibus and Barbara Shank. So if you all want to wave, you can all see them there. All right, good to have you both with us. All right, so as we get started here, I want Tony and Barbara, if you could just each introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about, not everyone knows you, but I think many of these folks do. it'd be great if you could share just a little bit about your practice before retirement, and then your role on the national board and how long you've been on that national board. So let's start with that. And why don't we go with Tony first?
And so good to be here with everyone and with my colleagues as well, Barbara on the board and Jess on the nominating committee. And of course, with all of you in the chapter. And I'm Tony Bibus, and my practice background most recently has been with Augsburg University, teaching there since 1992, retired full-time in 2012. And so I've been in retirement for a while, and am enjoying being able to concentrate on priorities to me, one of which is activities related to the association and to now at the national level. And before that, I was about 20 years in direct practice in child welfare, mostly, and most recently in Dakota County in mostly child protection and family-based services. So, and that's probably enough about me.
And
go ahead, Karen.
Your role on the national board, Tony, you're our Region 9 rep also,
and,
right?
Yes. And
which includes what?
And that's I had to know myself. I'm really learning a lot about the national organization, the intricacies of it, the complexities, and also the basic structure of the board, the governing board for the National Association of Social Workers. It has, I think, 21 members on the board total. 13 of them are the regional representatives or board directors, as we're referred to. And so Region 9 is Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota. And then there are at-large representatives, one of which is Barbara. And so they represent and are board directors for the whole country and all of the chapters. I think there's 55 chapters in the national organization. So, and it's a complex association, and I'm on a steep learning curve, and I'll talk probably.
So you're,
yes.
Yeah, you're going to share some about that with us, Tony. I love that. And I think just to highlight some of what you're saying here, just at the beginning, is you didn't know all of the things about being a national board rep or how the organization worked or anything before you got to the national board.
No.
Maybe you had some inklings.
No, well,
no. Okay, good. So everyone hear that.
Yeah, I had some activities with other associations at the national level, but not NASW. All my NASW experience has been local in the Minnesota chapter. But that's translated fairly well, since I think it's going to be useful for anybody interested at the national level to have some chapter experience, just so one has a bit of context there, and then multiply that by 55. So that's, but yes, much of it I made assumptions or kind of could make some guesses, but it's there's a lot to learn and also to be amazed by, actually, with the association's scope and breadth and complexity of goals and efforts and involvements. So yes, yeah.
And Tony, you're a new board member, right? So you just started in July.
Yes, so it elected which was in June at the June meeting. The election was verified by the board. So yes, since June, and it's a 3-year term. And yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Tony. And next up, Barbara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, practice before retirement, your role on the national board, how long you've been in that position? And you are muted, Barbara.
I muted myself without knowing
it. There you go.
Hi, I'm Barbara Shank, now unmuted. Prior to retirement, I was a dean and professor at the University of St. Thomas, St. Catherine University School of Social Work for 40 years. So prior to that, I was in community corrections for 6 years in Ramsey County. Loved that job. It was a great job, but absolutely loved every minute of being at school and being with students and faculty. So that was a great 40 years of fun and excitement over at St. Thomas and St. Kate's. Role on the board. This is my second of a 3-year term, and I am a director at large, which means I'm covering the United States. I have 3 different roles on the board currently. I'm chair of the audit committee. I serve on the ambassador committee and also on the bylaws committee. And it's interesting. It's one of Mitch Joyner is our national president, and it's somebody who I've worked with and I've known for a multitude of years. And she's doing an excellent job at the national level.
Yes.
But she's not somebody who says, "What do you want to do?" She's somebody who says, sends out a letter and says, "I'm appointing you as the X, Y, and Z. Do you accept this appointment?"
Yeah.
And so it's yes for me because I like the involvement. One of the things is, how did you get involved, or why did you get involved at the national level? And I had been president of the Minnesota chapter, secretary, president, a number of different roles. But I had served on the Delegate Assembly, National Delegate Assembly Planning Committee for several years. I also chaired the Practice Research Network for the national office, and been involved with Social Work Speaks. But although I had applied for several years, I never was able to get a position on the slate for the national board. So I thought, why not? I'm retired now, and nobody I knew was on the nominating committee any longer. Here was a chance to give that a shot. So I applied and was slated. So I was actually quite amazed that I did get on the slate and then won the election. So I was excited about that. I'm not a sitter, I'm a doer. I like to be a player. I like to be involved. And so I was certainly aware of the angst and the challenges around the whole, what was then called the modernization situation. And so I was very curious to see how that was being operationalized, how it was working out, what the challenges were, and if there were challenges, how I could be part of the process of getting those taken care of. So it's a very interesting role. What else did you want me to talk about, Karen?
That's good. I think that's good to start with, Barbara. Let me
Okay.
I'm going to highlight a couple things that you talked about for our audience, and then I'll pose some other questions to you both. First, I want to say to our audience, you do not have to be an academic to be a national board member. So you're hearing from 2 people who happen to work in academia, but I think, they have a good broad sense of what the field is like from being in academia. They also often, our academics are involved nationally in other ways. There's a couple of other associations that academics are a part of, with research, with teaching, that sort of thing. And so I think they're used to having this national conversation and used to being players in that. And so I often see our academics step up into those roles, but I don't think that should preclude any of you who are in practice from throwing your hat in the ring also.
Karen?
I also heard, yeah, Barbara.
Let me say, I think one of the reasons that you often see people like Tony and I involved at the national, even at the state level, is because academics have a flexible schedule generally. And, we've had the privilege of having the time that we were able to devote to those kinds of activities. And it's much harder when you're in practice and you have a real schedule that you need to follow. And so I think that's one of the reasons that you often see academics who are doing multiple things.
Absolutely.
Because we had that flexibility in our lives to step up. And that Doesn't
I
mean
think
that
that's
we shouldn't have more practice people. Absolutely.
sure. I'm wondering if each of you could comment just a little bit on that, like what the time requirements have looked like, and like how much time you're spending on NASW stuff, what times of days the national meetings are happening. I know at the chapter, we end up holding, like, our board meetings are now in the evenings. Most of our committee meetings are either first thing in the morning or at the end of the day, because we have so many working active social workers who this is not their day job. This is the side gig and volunteer work. And so we try to make it really accessible. In these national roles, what does that time commitment look like in times of days?
I could speak first. I think, at least for me, the actual weekly time commitment has not been that great. Serving on 3 committees, things tend to, be pretty calm for a long time. And then when you get closer to board meetings, you tend to, as usual, meet more. The
Sure.
Ambassador Committee was a very active committee, and we met several times over for a couple hours each to pull that together. Bylaws, we had different bylaw issues that we had to take care of. And the audit committee hasn't met yet because the audit doesn't happen till the end of the year. So, there's more things for me to do as a chair to, read and see that. But national board meetings generally start at noon on Friday. Go Friday afternoon,
Okay.
Saturday, and then you're generally done Saturday afternoon, so you can leave if you want to do that. And currently now they're both in person and on Zoom as well. So I think last board meeting we had maybe 5 of us who actually came into Washington for the board meeting, and everybody else was on Zoom.
And who pays for that travel?
NASW pays for it.
Okay. Yeah.
And the hotel. So it's
okay. So they make it accessible if you want to be there in person, or if you want to join virtually also. Lovely. Tony, how about your experience in terms of time commitment as a new board member, your committee assignments, that sort of thing? What's that been looking like?
And it's been manageable. And saying that, I have a schedule that I prioritize my time with my grandkid and other family responsibilities or demands, or what I want to do, priorities. And being retired, you can kind of choose amongst them. But so with that proviso, it seems to be very manageable. And for me, traveling is something I don't want to engage in unless I absolutely have to, mostly because it would take me away from my grandkid. So I want to, I've been appreciating the virtual availability of meetings, and they've, the one thing that's been surprising in some ways, the board meetings, of course, are scheduled way ahead of time, and one can really plan and prepare for the time commitment there. But I've also been surprised that there's events and meetings that are scheduled kind of within a day of when they're actually held. And for example, we had a kind of immediately called meeting that took place on Monday, and the fact that it was a full board meeting wasn't clear until the day before. So so that was that's been taking some getting used to, and I got assigned at first to 3 committees, and they took me off of one, saying that nobody should be on 3 committees, and there's Barbara serving on 3. So and one of the committees, and I have not had any activity with them. I haven't even been contacted yet about their workings. And one is the PACE board committee for the PACE at the national level. And the other is the planning committee for the Delegate Assembly. And both of them, I'm looking very much forward to being part of. It fits other interests of mine as well. And so I'm anticipating to get started with that. And it was great to hear Barbara's experience then with the planning for the Delegate Assembly. And that is the sort of the voice of the membership, and the governing of the association by the membership happens at the Delegate Assembly, to which I've never gone in person. So I'm another steep learning curve. That's another theme for my whole experience so far, is this steep, but fun. I knew it was
learning curve.
I knew it was going to be learning, and I love the learning. So steep doesn't bother me. In fact, it's a great thrill. It's a thrill ride.
Part of the fun.
That's
good
for me. Yes.
Delegate Assembly is virtual now.
Yes, I saw that, and thankfully.
So I wanted to share with our participants just a little bit about Delegate Assembly, because we're also working to fill our reps to Delegate Assembly, and many people don't know what that is. So basically, as Tony and Barbara have alluded to, we have this Delegate Assembly thing that happens it's 3 years. Technically, the big meeting happens. And Delegate Assembly is basically, I think of it like a Senate. Like the Senate of NASW gets together every couple of years to work on policy statements for the organization and changes to the code of ethics, those sorts of things, which includes bylaws for the larger association, that sort of thing. So this is, in addition to the board, this is a huge decision-making body for the association. And when the chapter puts Delegate Assembly positions on our ballot, so we get, as a medium-sized chapter, we get 3 reps to Delegate Assembly. One is always our board chair, and then the other 2 are other members who are elected to that position. In recent years, we've had no one apply to be our reps for Delegate Assembly, which is wild to me. And I think it really has to do with people not understanding what the role is exactly. And actually, I've been bringing this up in lots of venues, so in different trainings and things that we're doing. And in our last supervision series training, which is our 30-hour certification series, we had 3 people who followed up with me after and said, I might be interested in that role. So it's great. The more we talk about it, the more people are interested. But that group basically is reps from all across the country who come together and make decisions about what are our policy statements, what are those things that go into Social Work Speaks, what are our the full association's bylaws, and then also changes to the code of ethics get discussed and voted on at Delegate Assembly, and that's a huge one.
And the national program priorities are decided by the delegate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. So focus areas that come back to the chapters to say, what are we all prioritizing across the country gets discussed at Delegate Assembly. So if anyone in the audience is interested in those roles, we are currently working to fill our 2 openings. They will be done by board chair appointment this year. But those are things you could be thinking about for future as well. I want to hear from both Barbara and Tony a little bit about kind of what are your priorities as board members right now. So I hear you talking about, being on committees and sort of being reactive to whatever the association is asking you to be a part of. But did you go into this role with any particular things you really wanted to get done? I heard, Barbara, you talking a little bit about modernization, and we could probably describe for our audience what that was and why that's important to you. But were there other things that you're particularly trying to work on or get done in the association?
One of the things that's been important to me is this whole area of communication and relationship with the chapters. Being a unification, now being a one organization with chapters in a different way than it used to be set up. I think the communication, from what I understood, the communication and the relationship was a bit tenuous for a while and is getting better. And I think that's one of the things that I have been trying to pay attention to, is that the chapters get the information they need to operate in a way that's positive for them, and that NASW National does not hold back that is more transparent about the whole operation. That's one of my goals.
Yeah.
And
just to share with the audience, I just want to bring people up to speed a little bit on what modernization was and what Barbara's saying about us, becoming one. We've always been one association. Okay, we have the national office, we have a chapter for every member, basically. And what happens is when you pay your membership dues, which all go through national, half of that money stays at the national office and half comes to the chapter to go about the work of the association. But prior to this focus on what we called modernization a few years ago, every chapter was very autonomous. So we all did our own finance, HR, IT, like running of, so we were basically like 55 different little organizations, all working on our own in so many ways across the country. And then there was also the national office. And so now we are, after modernization, we are more one in the sense that the national office does some of those back office functions for us. So they do our HR and IT and more of the communications. And it's an interesting sort of different relationship where now we're all sort of in the fold. It provides for all sorts of good things in terms of making my job more manageable and easier, and for cash flow purposes and all sorts of things. It's great, but it's also hard because we're trying to do this thing differently, and we're trying to communicate more across the whole country and with the national office. And so it's been really interesting to see kind of how all of that has shaped up. It looks like we lost Tony, and so hopefully he will jump back into our group at some point here. So I'm going to continue for a couple minutes here with Barbara before we scoot along to Jess. Barbara, can you talk a little bit about where you see the association headed? What are you hearing from meetings at, national board meetings and all these committees and things about what's to come for us as an association?
That's a great question, Karen, and I don't have an answer. What we spend a great deal of time at the board meetings is looking at our relationship with the insurance trust, asking, a lot of questions about that relationship, how to, improve that relationship. We spend a lot of time on finances and asking questions about the finances of the organization. And then it's basically the priorities, the program priorities. So we haven't spent a lot of time being futuristic about what's the future going to bring. Membership is always a major discussion because, increasing membership is the lifeblood of the organization, and membership had been declining, but it's been getting better. And so, how do we, sustain, how do we maintain, how do we increase membership? Those are the kinds of things that we've been focusing on versus, any kind of strategic planning or, what's going to happen in the future.
Okay. Well, and that's important. I mean, you have to take care of the association also. A couple of things to highlight from a state perspective on membership. We've been in a really good place. We've been in the top 4 chapters in terms of growth and consistency and growth over the last several years. And yeah, it's beautiful. And as Barbara said, lifeblood of the organization, like we are an association. If we don't have members, we are not anything. So we have to be continuing to grow and engage our members and keep our members, that sort of thing. It's important. Financially, Barbara, just as a aside for people, my understanding from our national leadership meetings is we're doing pretty good financially. I know at the chapter, we're in really good stead over the last couple of years, continuing to get into a positive trajectory as a chapter, which is great. And we also nationally have been seeing a really, positive balance sheet, which is great. And I think there was a lot of concern at the beginning of COVID about people like membership dwindling and what's going to happen to us and not being able to do so many of the earned revenue things that both national and chapters do, but it's actually turned out to the good. We've been doing really well in earned revenue and things also. So the association's in a good place. Do you have any other thoughts on that from what you're hearing?
No, I think that's
At the
true.
board?
I think, we, I'm not an expert on the whole insurance field. I've been learning a lot about that over the last 2 years. But we own the insurance. They have acronyms to them that I'm not very good at. And it's an interesting relationship because the board of those entities, much like our chapters previously, have a lot of feelings of independence. And in reality, those entities are owned, they're subsidiaries of NASW and are owned by NASW. And their assets are our assets, not their own assets. But they do make money for the organization, and that money is used by the organization to pay our bills. So, we need them, and they need us because we're their parents. So, trying to work through that relationship is a very interesting one. There were several years before I got on the board, there were several years where, NASW was not meeting its budget. And we were able to do that because of the relationship with the insurance trust and the money that they handed over at the end of the year. We have now a very, and I should know his name, I believe it's Ryan, but our treasurer is excellent. And basically he moved the board just prior to my coming on the board to say, no, that's not acceptable. We are going to have a balanced budget. And that's where we've moved now to, is having a balanced budget. And it's certainly a more healthy place for an organization, especially of NASW size, to be in. And so, it's those things I find most interesting, is to, if you don't get involved, you don't get to help the organization move to a positive way. And so it's good. I think it's good now. It's the board. What I really like about this board is that they're very direct. The board members are not afraid to ask very challenging questions, to raise concerns when they have concerns, and to call both the president and the executive director, Angela McLean and Mitch Joyner, to task when they think it's necessary. And I find it very refreshing to see that kind of transparency and openness in a national board.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So we got Tony back. Welcome back, Tony. I heard you had a router issue.
Yes,
so Tony, we're just finishing up our section. Oh goodness, that happens. We're finishing up with you and Barbara, and I just want to see if you have any final thoughts on kind of direction that the association is going, or highlights of interesting things you think people need to know that the board's working on right now.
Well, no, and I'm, well, there's one thing that came to mind, and but I'm glad this is being recorded, because I'm going to view the recording to see what Barbara shared, because this is part of my orientation. So I've been mostly trying to get oriented, but one issue I've had on my mind ever since, well, for a long, long time, and now that I'm in this role, and especially with the Delegate Assembly planning and getting to know that process intimately, hopefully, I'm very interested in structuring the dues so they're affordable to members. So I'm getting to try to get know as much as I can about that. And, the reasons why there isn't a sliding fee based on ability to pay, for example, or sliding due scale. And so those are things I'm personally interested in. And then I'm trying to, with my contacts with the chapter, as I was saying, we've been highlighting this being in the regional role, in contrast to the at-large, there's 3 chapters to which I'm trying to be responsive and get to know the priorities from the chapters, and then be a conduit of information and communication between the board at the national level and the chapters to help keep moving this process of becoming one association for the membership that is ours. So that's a very complex, with lots of potential pitfalls along the way. And there seems to be a genuine effort on everybody's part to make this work. And the other theme that I've noticed, which is very inspiring, the other thought besides learning that I knew this would be inspiring, and it's more than I had ever anticipated. And one aspect of it is the true, authentic, genuine effort to bring principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racism into the organization's operations, as would be in accordance with our social work values.
Mm-hmm. So
now I want to hear from
Tony.
Jess.
You highlight so many, important things that are happening at the national level, and I hope people are hearing that. I want to highlight Tony is such a great asset for us, being our regional rep, and the fact that he really does want to hear from each of our 3 chapters that he represents. He's been coming to our Minnesota board meetings. He's been meeting with each of us executive directors from the 3 states prior to and after each of their board meetings to be keeping that flow of communication going. So I hope you as members are thinking about, okay, if there are things we want our national board to be considering, you have people in our midst that are our voices. And so bringing those to either the chapter, and we can bring them to Tony and Barbara, or you can reach out to them also. But I think it's a really nice thing we have, having people at the table from Minnesota that are listening and all are really connected to our chapter. So I want to thank both of you for being with us today, and they're both going to stick around. So Barbara and Tony are going to hang around for the end for some Q&A. But at this time, I want to turn it over to Jess Hoeper, who is going to share some about getting involved with all of the opportunities that exist on the national level. So as a representative of the National Committee on Nominations and Leadership Identification, Jess, I want to start with just hearing a little bit from you about what it's been like to be on the NCNLI committee and why you decided to do that role. And then we'll dive into all the things you want to share with people.
Sure. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. I'm brand new to this committee. So, I literally started in August, and I was one of the people running with Tony for the regional director. And so I'll just sort of give the background for that, like why even show up for that, right? So like rewind 10 years when I joined NASW, I joined because of the insurance. I was in private practice and I needed the insurance that was affordable. NASW was very elusive to me, like, what is this? And so then I thought, well, and it took years for me to realize, well, if I don't get it, who's going to help me learn it? I need to go figure out what this is and what do they do and how do I participate? Because I sat in that space of, I don't even know what they do. I don't get it. Well, then I took ownership of the only way to figure it out is to go figure it out. So I went to figure it out, and then thought, much like Barbara, like, why not? Why not show up for something and try for it? If I want to have an impact and I want to participate, then I should put myself in positions where you can have an impact and participate. And so Tony won our election, feel wonderful about that. And then after the election, I get, much like Barbara said, an email saying, you're nominated to this committee, do you accept? And I was like, I don't even know what this is. So then I have to go do I don't get it and figure out what is this. And then Tony, in the meantime, him and I have, collaborated and talked through things. And he sent me an article from Jessica Toft that was Words of Common Cause. So Social Work's Historical Democratic Discourse. And so I read that at the same time that I was getting this opportunity to participate, right? This is an opportunity. And in her article, she says, The profession must shine a light on what our democratic aspirations can and should be. And then she goes on to say, today's social work leaders should use broad platforms to confront injustice. And I thought, okay, if that wasn't like a blinding obvious, you need to participate in this is so, this national level finding leaders. I said, yes, I'll do it, but I am still very much in figuring out what this is, what is my role. I will tell you, NASW has been gracious in helping me learn what this is, because there's a lot of very experienced members on this committee that have a wealth of history. And they've been very accommodating to somebody who's not an academic. So when Barbara was talking about that, right, like academics have the flexibility of time, but they also have the system support. And so I think some of us that aren't in academia can help build system support to participate in national level things by simply showing up to participate. So here I am trying to do that and joining this committee where we're searching out leaders, and I am the representative for the same states that Tony is, the Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. So I am trying to get out, just connect, which is like my favorite thing to do in the world. So that's what I get to do, is connect with people and talk about, have you considered leadership and why and how come, or why not? And often it's really people getting the view that you have to be of a certain position or stature to show up for a leadership position. And it's me really saying, no, you do not. No, you do not. There are very, the qualifications to show up for a leadership role in NASW are, you need to be a member in good standing. It does not matter if you are brand new to this field. Like, you need to be a member in good standing. So that's been kind of fun to sort of like challenge the status of what people believe leadership should look like and maybe how we can move it forward, which is why I'm excited to tell you there's lots of opportunities open right now.
Good. So let's dive into that, Jess. Thanks so much for some of that background. And Shreen did put in the chat a link to that article that inspired you from our own Jessica Toft, who's now at the U of M. And Jessica will be presenting at our symposium some of her research on all of the things talking about also. So let's dive in.
Sure. Okay.
Tell us
so
what's going on.
This is just a lot of information that I put into slides. Do people get the copy of the slides so I don't have to like read word for word?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So right now, just things to know, we're in the nomination stage of the process. And so the election doesn't happen until December, but we are in the nomination stage until November 19th. So there's like that little pocket of window still, actively there to engage in leadership roles or show up or and so if you have any questions on the platform to apply is all on NASW's website. And I'm sure if you have my email now from this, so instead of having to look for who is your person to contact, I am very happy to direct you. I do not know all the ins and outs yet, but I am happy to walk the process with you and help you figure it out so that I can figure it out with you. So that's where we are.
Let me just say, the national website is socialworkers.org, and Jess's email address will be at the end of our presentation today, so will be in your slides. So make sure you get that.
Perfect. Okay, next slide, we're going to talk about what is available. So what is open? Right now, we just, Tony was talking about this before we got on, but there is election cycles every single year for NASW. So this election cycle this year is for the regional directors you see here. And why it's really important for me, for everyone to see this, is because of how interconnected we are nationally. Like I have colleagues in, I can think of many states. So I'm trying to let them know what's available in other states too, so that hopefully the same will happen to us. People will tell us, we can be a collective organization of national social workers. So here's the regions that are open. Please let anybody know that you know of in any of these regions, know that there's director positions. And then we have some of the really big positions, like this every role is a vital role, but this is a very big voiced role. So the president-elect, the secretary, those are pretty big roles to have open. So those are up for election in 2022, FYI. And again, you have, I think that's on the next slide. Can we go to the next one? I think that's more.
Sure.
This is specific again, because this is a 3-year term. So the regional directors, and then go to the next one and we'll talk about eligibility, because this is always the part I like to have people know that they see for sure. So you have to be in good standing. Students have to have had completed 1 year of their NASW program before taking the position of the student elected position. And then any NASW staff aren't eligible. So do you see what the big one is? All nominees must be members in good standing. I have been a member in good standing for years, and I had no idea that these positions or opportunities were available, because I did too think that this was afforded to a certain level of engagement in the association already, right? I mean, that was, so if you are wondering, can I show up for this? The worst that somebody can say to you is, once you are nominated, is no. That's the worst answer. And that's not that bad, right? It means, okay, somebody else will do it, but I showed up to participate. So this is the conversation I love to have. Like the eligibility is all of you that are here. You are all eligible, right? I mean, that's the message for people to see. Okay, so then let's talk through some of the desired qualities. There are some things they look for when you're filling out your nomination form. You're going to get this. I don't really know if I want to read all of them. So when it says like have expertise or knowledge in organizational and financial management, I had talked to the NCNLI committee chair about this. I said, what if they don't have any expertise in financial management? And she said they have to have a desire to learn and know about this. And so it is not that you have to already have acquired all of this expertise, but you do have to have a strong desire to learn it. And so I thought, well, that's great. You know, you are going to show up to positions like this, hopefully with a desire to learn things that you don't yet know. So you do not have to already have the expertise, but you do have to have a strong desire to learn about what is needed from that role. And then expertise in a particular method for the field of social work practice. That's wherever your passion is in this work, right? Like your expertise is in the passion in which you participate in this profession. So, and where you know, whatever role you're showing up in every day. So that's, you will be able to talk about that. Here's the things that have made people nervous that I have seen lately. You know, it's, I don't know what my expertise is. You do. Your passion in this profession and where you're working is your expertise. And again, same thing. Anything that says expertise, this one thankfully is married with an interest in instead of just an expertise of. So I like that, an expertise or an interest in fundraising and willingness to support fundraising efforts. So you have to have a desire to do these things, and then you should show up for these roles. We can go to the next slide. Okay, a few more for you guys to read. I don't think I have anything specific to highlight in these. Again, if you read these and you just want to talk through, would I be a good fit for nomination? Should I consider? My answer is probably going to be yes, if you meet the eligibility, right? Like if you're feeling an inkling to participate in this level, then do what Barbara and I did and say, why not? Why not show up and try it and go? We can go from there. We need people with desire to participate. So again, I'm available if you have ideas and people that would be good leaders, you think that you would like to show up as a leader, you're curious about what's open in the next years to come, ask me. I mean, we can talk through that too. And then really any questions. I'm a connector, so I love to connect. I will never be burdened by a connection. So get a hold of me. And then we'll talk through the last one, but I know Barbara and Tony are gonna help talk. Oh, I don't think I. Yeah, these are just more qualities and skills, more for your information so that you know kind of what the committee looks for when they're looking at leaders. And then the last slide
Things to highlight maybe in your application.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, Karen. And then the last slide, we're going to have Tony and Barbara participate, I think, right, Karen?
Yeah. So here I was hoping that Tony and Barbara would highlight, like, who do you think should think about being a national board member? Skills, attributes,
Well,
anything.
I think people who are currently in leadership in the chapter
Mhm.
are people that should definitely think about looking at national, at national roles. I get a little nervous about people who haven't had any experience, going from no experience, from being just, not just, but being a member, a short-term member,
Mhm.
and leaping to a national,
Sure.
the national level. So, but, if you've been on the
Mhm.
board, you've been an officer on the board, certainly you should look at those
Mhm.
things. Get involved at the local level first, and then move up to
Yep.
the national level, because it does require, I don't think, expertise, I think, is a little highfalutin, but you have to have an interest, certainly, in
Yeah.
financial management and fundraising. I think the thing on fundraising is really, it's not very transparent. It's not like you're going out to raise money. You're being asked to
Mhm.
give money. If you are on a national board, the expectation is that you will contribute your time, talent, and your resources to that organization. And I think we're
Mhm.
not very upfront about that.
Which, a reminder for folks, it is time, talent, and resources, and it's often and or. So it's, it's kind of what can you give also. And it's true for most board members, generally boards. And I wanted to highlight that piece you were talking about, Barbara, and both of you highlighted that earlier about, part of what prepared you for the national board is having been really active in the chapter and kind of knowing what we're doing and having a sense of NASW from kind of the chapter position. So there are actually several people in our audience today that have not been involved in the chapter in recent years, maybe a long time ago, before my time. And that is lovely. And so there are absolutely people who, like, for example, Barbara was chair of the NASW board when I was on the NASW board way back in like 2000 and
Ooh,
2000.
think about it.
2000-ish. Yeah, a long time ago, 20 years ago, longer, right? So, Barbara is one of those people, like, was engaged for a while at the state chapter, and then would continue to throw her hat in the ring on, things nationally. And Tony, in the same kind of way, Tony was also on the board of social work in Minnesota. So our Minnesota Board of Social Work. And so people who've, put their time in the social work realm in Minnesota and then also go nationally, I think that's lovely. So this workshop is not about our state chapter involvement, but I do want to say just that we do an election every year for chapter involvement. We had more people on our ballot than ever, and actually more nominees than we've ever had prior to our ballot last year, which is lovely. So lots of people wanting to get at the table. So I love that. I encourage all of you in the audience to get involved at our chapter. Our election for our board will open up in the spring. So we always elect in the spring for terms that start July 1. And so that means right after the first of the year, we're going to start saying to all of you, hey, who's interested? Who wants to be on the ballot? And so that will be the time for you to start thinking about, like, maybe I want to ante in at the state level and start getting in the conversation. We're also always looking for committee members. We're looking for committee leadership. So there's lots of ways to be involved in leadership at the chapter that's not just our board also.
Right.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Barbara?
I was going to say that I think that's an important point, Karen, that there's, committee membership is a great start. Committee leadership is a great start. We need all of those positions filled in order to maintain the kind of broad work that that NASW is doing. So, it doesn't have to be an elected position. It can be an appointed position as
Absolutely.
well. And then it just continues on.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, do you have anything to add to that?
No,
Who should think about being on the national board?
I was going to agree totally on that. I served 2 years on the board at the chapter level, but most of the experience I had before and after has been on committees, and they're all really cool ways of getting connected. And usually, when you're on a committee, you find out about things, or people point them out that you could also be involved in, and it's very, one thing leads to another and helps another. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
a lot of unanticipated multiplication of resources that you have available to you as in your practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to highlight about committee activism, and then I want to turn it over to our audience to ask some questions. We open up opportunities to be involved in our committees twice a year. So we take new members in September and in January. And so our newsletter coming up in December will be another push to say, hey, do you want to join a chapter committee or work group? And that's a great time for all of you to be looking for something that's interesting to you. Part of the reason we do that is, as we know, in good group work, if we continue to form forever, so we get new people at the table every meeting, it's like we never can get past the forming phase in our committees and work groups. So that's the reason to sort of put them in chunks of time and welcome new people in all at once. So with that said, how about questions, thoughts from our audience? Anything you'd like to drop into the chat, or anyone who'd like to just unmute yourselves and ask any of our presenters questions today? Anything we didn't clearly answer for you, or you're left with more questions than answers maybe? Just give people a moment in case they're formulating their question and typing to us. Not
Erin?
seeing any yet from the audience. Is there any last thoughts from our, yeah, who was that?
Me, Barbara.
Barbara.
One of the things
Good.
one of the tasks I'd like to spread out to everybody on this this meeting is that I think we all need to be ambassadors of NASW. You know, we don't need to be in official leadership roles to be ambassadors of our profession and our organization. And so I think, you know, it's up to us to encourage our colleagues, our friends, whoever are, you know, who consider themselves professional social workers to join NASW. It's one of those things that I'm baffled by. I've been baffled by my whole life of how people can say they are professional social workers and then not belong to the organization that represents professional social workers. You know, if we had every person who, you know, considers themselves or works as a professional social worker be a member of this organization, what this organization could do would be multiply 100-fold, because we would have the personnel power, the human power, the financial power to do all the kinds of things that we want to do. But we can do it in, you know, little ways, you know, encouraging people to attend webinars, to come to sessions, to come to the conference, to read material by NASW members, etc. You know, but we just need to be ambassadors for all the good work that NASW at the state level and at the national level does.
Thanks, Barbara. Any final thoughts from Jess or Tony? I think that was a pretty nice little closure there. What are you thinking, Tony?
No, ditto. Yep.
Good. All right. I agree. I mean, really, again, we are an association, and so we are only as strong as the members who come to the table and want to both ante in with, you know, your membership dues and that sort of thing that supports our ability to do our work, but then anteing in your time and your energy and your thoughts. And, you know, if you have something that you think is important that we engage in, you know, we're working on social justice issues every day, all day. We're working on behalf of the profession every day, all day. If there are particular issues in your practice that we should be working on, you have to tell us, or you have to get involved and make it known to us also, instead of, you know, I think a lot of us would sit back if we didn't understand the association and be like, well, they're not doing exactly what I want them to do. And instead, I'd ask everyone to lean in to the conversation and be at the table with us in some way. So with that, I really want to just send some appreciation to Jess and Barbara and Tony for sharing some of their expertise and most of all, just for being at the national table on our behalf. So thank you to the three of you for being willing leaders in our association. And I hope the rest of you in the audience maybe got some inspiration for yourself. I got a couple notes from people who are thinking about some things. So I hope some of you are now noodling on what you might want to get involved in. And those of you who are watching the YouTube and later on, you've got contact information for both Jess and I if you want to get involved at the national level or at our state chapter. With that, thanks so much for being with us today, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Bye, everyone.